Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. It's the post-game pod from a blowout win over the Sacramento Kings. Did the Timberwolves just out physical and out hustle another team? We'll talk about the tone that was set early in this game next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to us by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Monday, everybody. Today is the post-game pod from a big Timberwolves win over the Kings on Sunday, and the Timberwolves did something they haven't done, I don't think, all season, unless you want to count, I guess, Friday's win. They actually outplayed or out-physicaled and out-hustled another team. And they set that tone early in the game. And I want to start there on today's show by what they did in the first quarter. And specifically, like, Rudy Gobert was the guy that set this tone. Nas was part of it. Julius Randle's always kind of playing bully ball. But, I mean, like, everybody played hard in this game. And that's not something we frequently see. So I want to unpack that a little bit. We'll talk about some of the things overall the Wolves did really well in this game. Of course, we'll get to individual studs and duds later as well. First, though, the big three things off the top. A big thank you also off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, you can listen anywhere. You can also watch on YouTube, and you can follow on X as well. All right. The Timberwolves to this point in the season, like right now, they're 6-4 through 10 games, right? They've won 4 out of 5. And to this point, like, if you take a half step back and you look at the games that they've played, they've largely played, they've beaten the teams that they should beat by and large, minus the depleted Lakers game when Austin Reeves went for a billion points and like they only had 8 guys that played and the Timberwolves lost that game by a point. Take that game out. They've won all the games that you would think they would win, and they've lost all the games that were like, obviously it's not great losing twice to Lakers and the fashion in which they lost. In fact, all of their losses, except for that Lakers loss, their other 3 are all blowout double-digit losses. So that's not great. I'm not saying it's been great. But it's weird because we're used to this Timberwolves team often playing to their competition. Not as much. Well, yeah, I guess, last year it didn't seem quite as bad. But overall, in the Chris Finch era, it's like the Timberwolves have had a tough time getting up for games that they are favored in, right? "Quote-unquote easy games." Now, I know there's no easy game, whatever. But those are the games that we'll struggle to get up for. And their stars specifically. I would say Anthony Edwards, occasionally Julius Randle, Nas, Nas is actually, I think, one of the primary culprits along with Ant of like, hey, we're going to take it a little bit easy tonight. We should win this game. We're down now. We'll come back and win later. And it to their detriment. This season, for better or for worse, so far it's been the opposite. The Wolves are getting up for the bad games and they're beating getting up for the quote unquote easy games, the games in which they're larger favorites in, and beating the bad teams, or at least the teams that they should beat. And through 10 games, that's exactly been the case. In fact, I'd be willing to bet, except for probably the home Lakers game, I think the Wolves have won in every game that they were favored in and lost every game that they were underdogs. And over the course of the season, that's going to, lead them to high 40s wins, maybe 50-ish wins. The win total was what? For the season was 49.5 on FanDuel. That's probably where they'll be. Now, the key is, and this is, I guess, the key to any season, how many games that you're not, quote unquote, supposed to win do you win? And then how many games that you are supposed to win that you lose? And I think the upside to this Wolves team is greater. So if they can win the games against the bad teams and win them convincingly and give some of their guys, like Ant only had to play 30 minutes on the front end of a back-to-back, that's great. Give some guys some rest, build some confidence, and then I hate to say steal a game against a really good team, because I came into the season thinking the Wolves were a top 6 team in the NBA. But if you can steal a game here and there against the really good teams, then you're a 55 plus win team like they were 2 years ago, and they won 56. And this is why I'm so encouraged by a performance like this. And I realize I haven't gotten into the game itself yet, because this game was more about the effort level they put forward than just like looking at the box score and be like, Ant had 25 or whatever. Like, this is more about the mentality the Wolves came into this game with, which I think mostly mirrored what they did against the Jazz on Friday. I mean, they beat the Jazz by 40. They beat the Kings by 27, and it easily could have been 30-35 if garbage time had gone a little bit differently. Keon Ellis hadn't, the crowd hadn't convinced the Kings to put in Keon Ellis, and he did Keon Ellis stuff down the stretch. I say down the stretch, garbage time, fourth quarter. But a convincing dominant win, and the tone was set early by the stars, Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert. And I know Ant had a bad shooting start to this game. He missed like his first 5 shots, I think like 4 of which were 3-pointers. Had a couple bad offensive possessions in addition to that where he turned the ball over. But the defense, the help defense on the roller, when both Ant, and I think it was Ant and Nas in that moment, maybe it was Ant and Rudy, when they came to intercept a pass on a roller instead of staying home on the guy in the corner. And part of this helps because the Kings personnel, they just don't have enough dangerous 3-point shooters. So you don't have to stay home. But this is something that I believe the coaching staff wants them to do more of, which is not just tag the roller, but essentially pinch down and intercept that pass, provide resistance to the guy rolling to the rim. And this was after the guy who really deserves the most credit, which is Rudy Gobert, getting a pick 6 the other way, picking off a pass, taking it himself, which isn't always, advised, but it worked in this case. But again, I think it was the tone. It was the aggressiveness. It was Rudy saying, look, I'm a 4-time defensive player of the year. I'm going to get this deal, and I'm going to go coast to coast. And what happened? Rudy finished this game with 5 blocks. He dominated Domantas Sabonis. I know Domantas put up a 20 and 13, 2013, that's nice. Well, he shot 29% from the field, 5 of 17. Rudy had 5 blocks. Probably 2 or 3 of them were against Sabonis. And he caused a ton of those misses from Domantas Sabonis. Rudy Gobert was arguably the best player on the floor in this game. And I know Jaden had a great game. We'll talk about Jaden. Randle was once again very good. Anthony Edwards ended up having a really good game. But it was Gobert and Ant that in the first quarter set the tone for how this game should go for Minnesota. They were aggressive on defense. I thought appropriately aggressive on offense, even though Ant didn't make shots early in the game. And it was basically like, look, we're going to play hard. We're going to hustle. We're going to out-physical and out-hustle our opponent because we know we're better than them. They're 3-6. This is a team we should beat. Front end of a back-to-back on the road. Let's take care of business tonight and get back at it tomorrow in Utah. And that's exactly what the Wolves did. And it's such a about face from what we're used to seeing from this Timberwolves team. The opposite has happened so often against teams that they should beat, where they come out and they go through the motions and they either barely win or they lose a game they have no business losing. And I know that the schedule is ridiculously easy over the next week plus on paper. Like great, and I said this before the season. I think one of my bold predictions the Wolves would be like, I could pull it up for a future show to like 17-7 or something on New Year's. That's gonna be a tough thing to do now. That might not be the right number of games. 27-7? No, that's too many. I don't know. Some absurd record I thought they'd have on New Year's, and I have it written down, and we'll get back to it. But it was largely based on, almost entirely based on the schedule, the lack of back-to-backs overall. I think they've only got 3 before the end of the year. And obviously they're in the middle of one now. The overall, the opponents who they play. And so it'd be easy to sit here and be like, well, they're doing it against bad teams. And I know we're only 2 games into the stretch, the Jazz and the Kings, and now they go Jazz Kings again this week. But so far, it's encouraging. And if they can maintain this edge and this mentality, what happens? Well, you build confidence against these teams. Not only are you banking wins in the ridiculously difficult Western Conference, but you're building confidence when you have those tough games. When you go, they go Utah, Sacramento, they win these 2 games, which they should. Doesn't mean they will, they should. Then that means they've won 4 straight and 6 of 7 going into a game against Denver on Saturday night, which actually is also a second night of a back-to-back. So that's going to be tough. Dallas on Monday, obviously tougher than Utah and Sacramento. And then Washington. And then at Phoenix. And then at Sacramento again before you get at OKC on Thanksgiving Eve. And there is a real chance the Wolves could go into that game having won like 9 of 12 or 10 of 12 or 10 of 13. There's a real chance that happens. And they're going to have some level of confidence, and they know they can't waltz into a game against the defending champs who basically wiped the floor with them, at least in 4 of 5 games, or 3 of 5 games, really, in the Western Conference Finals last year. They're not going to walk into that game overconfident. So building that level, appropriate level of confidence is super important, and they have to take care of business to do it, and they have to do it in a way that you can hang your hat on. And they did in this game. It wasn't smoke and mirrors. They played hard. They dominated the paint, which we'll get into. They had good individual efforts in this game. We'll get into those too. But it's the mentality with which they approach the game against the Kings that is extremely encouraging for what's to come for this team. And this is something that nationally, like, people are going to be slow on. And there's Chris Finch haters out there that aren't going to recognize this. And sure, it would have been great if they'd been doing this all along, and we'll see if it continues over the course of the next 2 weeks and over the course of the season more broadly. But right now, it's a really good sign. And I don't know how much of it is this familiarity, is that this team is now a little bit more, veteran. But whatever it is, as long as they can take care of business and win 90% of their games, 90+% of their games against below 500 teams, this team is going to continue to build proper habits and confidence to win games against the Denvers and the OKCs and the San Antonios of the world. And I was really encouraged by that. It'd be easy to lay an egg on the road in Sacramento. Really easy. Now we'll see what they do tonight, of course. I want to get into some of the individual performances. Yes, Ant and Rudy and Jaden, especially those guys. We'll talk about all of them and kind of the big takeaways from the game. I'll do my 3 big things here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match. With Robinhood, you play for the win, not just on game day, every day. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all in one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends, our title sponsors at Game Time. Basketball season is now 3 weeks. We're 3 weeks into basketball season. It's more than just here. Nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real. Getting tickets can be a total headache between waiting and queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout. It is easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. And that's where Game Time comes in. The app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. Upcoming, the Timberwolves, yes, are on the road tonight, but there's a 4-game homestand upcoming. Kings on Friday. Obviously a great Friday night game last Friday against Utah. Be a Target Center for a big Friday night game, or the back-to-back against Denver on Saturday, and then into next week, 4 straight home games. You can find great tickets on there. There's plenty of options for NBA tickets for under $25. Perhaps the best thing about Game Time, though, is the zone deals. They're an absolute game changer. You could pick your section. Game Time will pick your seats, and you'll save big. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. All right. My 3 big things from this game. Number 1, of course, we talked about. It's the effort level. It's the hustle. It's just straight up playing hard. And that really matters. Minnesota's +6 after the first quarter. They scored 40 in the second quarter. And by the way, 40 in the third. I think what was the stat? I think they scored 40 plus in one of the quarters against Utah on Friday. So I think it's 3 of 7 quarters or something that they scored 40 plus. But anyway, they were up 6 after the first. They were up 17 at halftime, and they continued to expand the lead. It was 27 after the third quarter, and ultimately they won by 27. This was a complete shellacking, and it was because of the effort level first and foremost. They did a really good job in the paint, which is to be expected. But I mean, like, Precious Achiuwa is a good defender, and Sabonis is obviously a really good player. There was not a whole lot of big depth for this team outside of those 2 guys. But Minnesota ended up winning the points of the paint in this game by 18 points. That would be my second big thing from this game, other than the effort level and relentless hustle in this game. Minnesota was a plus 18 points of the paint, which is a really, really good thing to see. And we talked about Gobert, but Gobert was legit dominant. 5 blocks. And we haven't had as many of these big block performances from Rudy over the last couple of seasons. That's gone down a little bit. Part of that is he plays a different role than he did in Utah defensively, and we've talked about that in the past. But for casuals or non-Wolves fans that are like, oh, Rudy's blocks are way down. Yeah, he's lost a quarter step last year, and it looks like maybe he did this year too. But the technique is still there. The feel is still there. The dominance, the length is still there. He plays a different role in Minnesota than he did in Utah. He's not just a straight up hang by the rim protector. He's out on the perimeter a little bit more. He's switching. He's the drop isn't always as deep. They do different stuff with Rudy than they did in Utah. But this game, he was like, look, I'm just going to body up Sabonis. I'm going to body up these guys that get into the paint, and I'm going to swat some shots. And he did. Jaden had 2 blocks of his own. So there was some, not just points in the paint, and obviously the blocks play into that a little bit, but the overall deterrence of those guys in the paint was very impressive. And they were like, I don't know, probably another dozen shots at least that were impacted, especially Sabonis attempts that Rudy just got into him and completely impacted the shot. And I thought, like, ultimately there were a lot of free throw shot in this game. I thought the officials did a pretty good job of letting them play, especially early. That was to Minnesota's advantage because, again, they were the aggressor. And we go back to this when they play teams that out-aggressive them, the OKCs and like last year, especially like the Pacers of the world, that just play harder. Houston, right? I don't ever really feel like the Lakers are more aggressive, but somehow that Wolves always end up on the wrong side of the whistle against the Lakers. It's weird. Actually, most Lakers opponents do. Very weird. But usually the aggressor gets the benefit of the doubt. Or maybe you get called for more fouls, but they can't call them all, right? That's the Thunder strategy. It's like cornerbacks in the NFL. Like go back to the Legion of Boom. Yeah, Legion of Boom Seahawks teams with Richard Sherman and those guys. Like these teams that just grab and hold on receivers on the perimeter on a football field. It's like that. They can't call them all. They can't call all the fouls, right? That's the mentality some of these teams have. And it's sometimes gross to watch, and it feels unfair when it's your team on the wrong end of it. But as it turns out, if you're the aggressor, it's a good thing. And Minnesota was actually the aggressor in this game. And to this point in the season, what was it? The Knicks game last week that I was upset about because the Knicks only shot like 11 free throws because it was the exact flip of what we'd seen. Minnesota had fouled too much early in the season, like still early in the season, but the first week and a half. And then it was like all of a sudden they weren't trying on defense, which is a bigger problem. And now I think we've found, at least over the last couple of games, the appropriate medium ground of like, we're going to be aggressive. We're not going to commit dumb fouls on shots. But if we foul and they get into the penalty because we're being aggressive appropriately, we can handle that. We can live with that. And, Sabonis is good at getting to the line anyway. And DeRozan's kind of hit and miss there with how he plays. But for the most part, I thought this was really well done by Minnesota. And again, that plays into my first point of my 3 big things, the aggressiveness. But I thought it was appropriately aggressive. I thought that the domination of the paint was really, really good. And I think this is an interesting kind of third big thing. We already talked about Ant and Rudy. But I actually think I was maybe most encouraged by the Julius Randle performance. This would be my third big thing. I've started to do 3 big things if you're new to the show. Usually it's first segment, but I had to really lean into the aggressiveness the Wolves played with on today's show because it really stood out to me. My third thing is Julius Randle in a night where he doesn't pop off the score sheet. He tied for 3rd on the team in scoring. He was 2nd in rebounding. He was also tied for 2nd in assists. Is that not the overall volume of what the stats look like are suppressed because he only played 26 minutes. It was a blowout. But is that not the right ratio for the perfect Julius Randle line? Tied for 3rd in scoring. Yeah, maybe he'd be 2nd in a perfect night. 2nd in rebounding to Rudy and tied for 2nd in assists. That's the perfect Julius line. He should be in the top 3 in all 3 of those categories every night. And if you look at what he's averaged over the last, week's worth of games, week plus, I mean, he's like in the mid-20s and like 6 or 7 assists and rebounds per game. Like that's perfect. Julius should be that Swiss Army knife type player. He shouldn't just be a high volume scorer. He should be, I used the word hub maybe a week ago. I can't remember which game that was when he was, it might've been the Brooklyn game. So yeah, a week ago when I was like, look, he's the hub of the offense. Might've been the Charlotte game before that where everything's revolving around Julius in a good way. He's making the right decisions and he knocks down open shots. Like I know he was only one of 4 on 3s in this game, but if he's open and it's a catch and shoot 3, he's going to make it. And he ultimately shot 50% from the floor too. He only got to the line twice, but this was a well-rounded Julius Randle performance. I thought he was solid on defense and it doesn't pop off the box score. And he wasn't in the first 3 guys I mentioned, right? Because the lines for Jaden and Rudy and Anthony Edwards are all superior at first glance. and Rudy and Ant had the splash moments early, and Jaden was consistent throughout. But Julius Randle was consistent in a way that that the Timberwolves need him to be consistent in if they're going to get to where they want to go this year. And thankfully, there hasn't been another shoe that's dropped. Like, this really feels like Julius Randle's kind of amended playing style. And we saw it a bit over the first 2 rounds of the playoffs last year, and then they ran into the OKC buzzsaw in the conference finals. But if this is the new Julius Randle, and this is his new approach, where this is like, look, I'm okay with the 19-6-4 in a blowout win, shooting 50% from the field, because I know I'm going to get my shots up tomorrow, right? I mean, he still got 16 shots up. He tied for the most shot attempts on the team with Ant, which is, again, how it should work. Like, this is almost exactly, if you said Julius Randle was third in scoring, second in rebound, second in assist, tied for first in field goal attempts, I'd be like, yeah, that's the right game. That's the right box score line for Julius Randle. Very impressive game from Julius. I want to close by doing individual studs and duds. We'll peek ahead. I don't want to get too much into the Utah matchup. I guess we just saw them Friday. We'll talk a bit about that, and that's how we'll close the show here today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at FanDuel. We're 3 weeks into the NBA season now. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of any particular game, West Coast games last night and tonight, so that's probably less likely than when they were on the East Coast last week, but maybe you missed the start of the game. Maybe you just want to ride the hot hand. Look, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to fourth quarter comebacks, which maybe would have been a little bit less exciting in the Kings game, but who knows, against Utah tonight, second night of a back-to-back at altitude. Anything could happen. You can also combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Tonight, the Timberwolves are 7.5-point favorites at Utah. It's actually a little lower than I expected, but again, on the road at altitude, second night of a back-to-back. Remains to be seen if everyone plays. TJ Shannon's obviously still out with the foot injury, but I don't know. I don't mind Minnesota minus 7.5. Like, for all the reasons I stated earlier, Minnesota's in a good place right now in terms of how hard they're playing, not playing down to their opponents. I like Minnesota minus 7.5 tonight. I think they cover that in Utah. Live betting the games, like if they get down early, you still feel good about that. Maybe that line shifts a little bit to like minus 10 or something after the first quarter. If they're down, it keeps every game exciting, especially when your team makes a late push like Minnesota hopefully doesn't need to do, but might have to do against Utah. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Okay, individual studs and duds from this one. It's actually kind of hard to pick three. I'm going to go, number one's got to be Rudy. 19 points, 12 boards, 5 blocks, 1 assist, 1 steal, only 1 turnover, and only 1 foul in 34 minutes. He was first on the team in minutes played because he was so dominant. Was a plus 21 still, and held Sabonis to 29% shooting. I know the 20 and 13 for Sabonis. Great. He got to the line 12 times, and not a lot of that was actually Rudy. Like, nobody on the Wolves had more than 4 personal fouls either, by the way. Rudy only had 1. So it was spread out. And the help defense was good and all that, but Rudy was phenomenal in this game. Like, Rudy to me was the best player on the floor overall in this game. I'm going to go. It is real tough to pick 3. I talked about Julius Randle already. I'm going to have to go Jaden McDaniels. 21 points on 10 shots is about as efficient of a game as you're going to see Jaden McDaniels. And I say that, but like, he's been playing this way now this season. Like, that's just becoming a Jaden McDaniels game. And I say that with caution 10 games in. But like, I don't know, 21 points on 10 shots. He had 22 points on 14 shots on Friday. The game before that in the loss to the Knicks was less efficient. But the game before that, 22 points on 11 shots. Like, is he just an efficient player now? Through 5 games in November, he's shooting 66% from the field and averaging 18 points a game. I mean, for the season, he's averaging almost 19 a game on 56% shooting. It's absurd. He's shooting 54% for 3. Like, Jaden has been awesome. And this game was no exception. It was just more of the same. 21 points on 10 shots, 5 boards, 3 assists, 2 blocks for Jaden McDaniels. He committed 4 fouls in 26 minutes, but again, appropriate levels of aggression. He did have 2 turnovers, but we'll take that if you get the 21 points on 10 shots. Really phenomenal game from Jaden McDaniels. The third stud, I could go either Julius or Ant. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to split it. We talked about Julius Randle already. 19, 6, and 4 assists. 19 points on 16 shots is efficient enough for Julius. and had 26 points on 16 shots, more efficient, 5 of 11 on threes, despite missing his first 4 3-pointers. Yes, that means he finished making 5 of his last 7 3-point attempts. He had 5 assists to just 2 turnovers, 4 boards, 2 steals, ended up with a really nice game. Despite the bad start, it was a team best plus 25, which is really good to see. A lot was made, like right when he came back from the injury. The Knicks game, like he was a huge minus, an individual, like single game plus minus, which is noisy, but he didn't play well against the Knicks. Obviously, he was better against the Jazz on Friday. And a rough start in this game, but finished great. Like second, third quarter, what did he have? 13 in the second quarter, was really good in the third quarter, and then the game was over. He played like a couple of fourth quarter minutes. A really nice Ant performance. It was just like he was clearly the best overall player on the floor. I think in this game, Rudy had the best performance, but like it was clear who the real like all NBA candidate is, and it's Anthony Edwards, or I guess actual all NBA second team guy. It was Anthony Edwards. It was not Domantas Sabonis. It was not obviously DeMar DeRozan at this stage. It was not Zach LaVine, who played fine, but Anthony Edwards was awesome in this game as well. I don't really have any duds. Like Nas had some rough moments. But he also had like some tone setting moments. Like there was a flagrant foul. I thought he was active in this game. He scored just 13 points on 14 shots. So not super efficient. I'm not going to give him a dud. I thought he was fine and payed hard. Conley, DiVincenzo, both those guys played well, about eye-popping numbers. I thought Jalen Clark was really good. Really everybody that played well for Minnesota. Dillingham was the only player for the entire game for the Timberwolves that had a negative plus minus. Again, individual single game plus minus is overall noisy, and I'm not going to read into that too much, but I just wanted to put that out there. 16 minutes, he managed to be a -1 in a game they won by 27, and every other player, including the garbage time only guys, Miller, Beranger, Juzang, Highland, those guys all were positive, and Dillingham managed to be a -1. A little bit fluky, but there's still some rough around the edges stuff. He had a couple shots in garbage time. I'm hopeful that will kind of spur him on and will give him some confidence. There was at least 1, maybe 2 shots in garbage time where the shot selection was not great, but the shot making was very good. And that's what you can kind of live with if he's making those shots and he's playing with confidence, because he is so dynamic. And there's an upside there that's very tantalizing. Like the upside is still for him to be a really good starter in this league, if not an all-star. Like that upside is still there for Rob Dillingham. And we saw flashes of it in garbage time of this game, but the overall shot selection, the decision-making is still a little clearly a little rough around the edges, but he did play actual rotation minutes in this game, by the way. It wasn't just garbage time for Dillingham. So he continues to see the floor as part of the rotation, which is really nice. And obviously TJ Shannon being out contributes to that. All right. The Wolves get the Jazz tonight. As mentioned earlier, they are 7.5-point favorites at Utah on the second night of a back-to-back. We just saw Utah on Friday. And for the Jazz, they haven't actually played since Friday. So they've been home after losing to the Wolves in Minnesota Friday night. They were home Saturday, Sunday, not playing any basketball and not playing any games, and they play Monday night. So they have the rest advantage, the travel advantage, the whole thing, which is why Minnesota's only 7.5-point favorites. We know Utah can be dangerous, but we also saw what they did to them on Friday. So as long as Minnesota, as we talked about on Friday's show, can stay out of foul trouble, which is a little counterintuitive to what I said earlier about playing with aggressiveness, but there's an appropriate level of it. When you're playing a team that's just an inferior team and not a good offensive team overall, with like the Utah Jazz, you need to be careful about that. Remember, Utah is like they're 24th on cleaning the glass, 26th in offense on cleaning the glass, but they're number 2 in free throw rate, and they're number 4 in offensive rebound rate. Shifts quite a bit with no Walker Kessler. We've only got a couple games of data of them without Kessler, who's out for the season, but that includes Friday. Minnesota has to dominate the defensive glass and do their best to defend without fouling, because that's the only way that Utah can really hang around in this game, is by getting to the line, and coupled with that is offensive rebound opportunities, right? Offensive rebounds very often can lead to, what do they lead to? They're easy buckets inside, they're wide open threes, or they're free throws, because you're following the guy who's gotten the offensive rebound or whatever. Or you're scrambling on defense, you're trying to recover, you commit a foul. So defensive glass is first and foremost, and then secondarily, I'd be worried about opponent free throws, because that's really the only way that Utah is going to get any efficient offense. They're a bad shooting team. They're 29th in effective field goal percentage as a team, yeah, I mean, like that's really it. If Minnesota could do that, if they can dominate the glass like they did the other night, like they did against Sacramento as well, they actually only ended up a +1 in rebounding, but when it mattered. And they also, again, limited, like Sacramento missed a ton of shots, right? That's the other thing. is when your opponent misses a lot of shots, there's a more available offensive rebounds, which is why Reid is more important than just saying like, oh, the Kings got 12 offensive rebounds. That's too many. Well, guess what? They also missed 50 shots in this game. So against a team like Utah, who's bound to miss a lot of shots, you got to control the glass. And it's not just volume. It's just limiting those second chance opportunities. And then secondarily, limiting free throw attempts as well. And then along with that, I think comes the dominating of the paint itself and winning the points of the paint. I think that's related, of course. All right. The live postcast with Jack and Luke will be right here on Locked On Wolves on YouTube and also on the audio feed tonight. I'll be back very early, probably overnight. I'll record right after the game and with the post-game pod for Tuesday. That's what we'll do. And then we'll look ahead to the rest of the week as the Wolves continue. Actually, they have a couple days off now. I think they don't play again until Friday. So we could dig in a bit on some of the numbers through the first 11 games of the season. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. Of course, you can also follow this show on X at Beecken and then also at Locked On T Wolves. Don't forget the T. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your experts on all the biggest stories. A reminder that for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Show with Josh Lloyd. It's the best fantasy basketball podcast out there. You can find it on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.